Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome to Sofa Reviews. Today we're watching Ultramarines. I hope you're happy, Toby.
Released in 2010, it's based on the tabletop game Warhammer 40k, which is a game you like to play, isn't it, Dave?
That's right, Matt, it is.
So, as a fan of the games, what's this movie like?
Well, this movie is kind of like finally getting to have sex with the girl of your dreams, only to find out her vagina is full of rusty nails.
Anyway, the movie starts looking a lot like Metroid Prime.
So a space marine called Nidon has to run off to protect an indeterminate relic before we cut to the opening credits.
Which allows us to start the film with John Hurt narrating what I'm told is a Warhammer 40k traditional blurb.
Which is really cool until the final line.
They are steel and they are doom. They are the champions of mankind. And the greatest of them all are the Ultramarines.
So, are they not the best then?
Well, I suppose it depends on... Well, no, actually, sod it. They're the main ones used to advertise it to kids, so they're very tedious and generic and boring. The only thing they're really good for is they're really satisfying to watch die.
Is that a rule in the game?
What?
Anyway, we open up on two space marines sparring each other.
After a dull and awkward-looking battle, Proteus manages to get the better of Captain Severus.
Instead of accepting defeat, the captain just smacks him over with his helmet.
Victory is mine, Proteus. We never yield.
So if you never yield, then a sparring match is in fact a battle to the death. God, this is stupid.
Later on, the captain explains that they're going into war for the first time as Ultramarines.
Which is fine if you ignore the fact that they would have been scouts before this and so been into hundreds of combat zones. Admittedly not with the full power armour, but still Ultramarines.
But instead of preparing for combat, they just decide to kneel in front of a giant warhammer.
The film never really explains it, but they're very careful and respectful of the older weapons, treating them as almost sacred relics.
Why exactly?
Well, long story short, it's a case of they don't make them like that anymore.
So after that, we finally get to see them preparing for combat.
Look to your battle gear, and it will protect you.
We guard it with our lives,
As your armor guards your life.
as it has, my fallen brethren.
Well, if they're fallen, it clearly didn't do a very good job protecting them, did it?
We then see Proteus chatting with Apothecary Pythol.
Instead of listening to or respecting what the apothecary has to say, they're busy dreaming of glory like fresh young recruits, despite looking so hideously old.
They take a Thunderhawk down to the planet where they're told that they're investigating a distress signal sent out by another group of space marines.
Well then, someone's still alive, Captain.
The beacon, Brother Proteus, may be on autocycle.
It turns out that 100 Imperial fists were guarding the planet, but because the Ultramarines are apparently the best, they've only sent 12.
On the planet, 10 of them set off, with the sergeant and pilot off in the land speeder.
Well, this seems like a good time for more tedious and annoying dialogue.
Wait here.
The captain stops to look at a storm they're heading towards.
Until the panicked rookies think the banner is on fire, but this is actually an illusion brought about by the weather.
Just balefire, Pythol. I thought you were the weather expert.
This is impetuous. We do not know what we're walking into.
Do we ever? We're the Emperor's chosen, my friend.
The Emperor's chosen, like red shirts?
Butt plugs.
A little further on, and Proteus starts shooting at something he thought he saw.
However, there's nothing there, and so the captain lets the others mock him for a bit.
I saw something.
What?
I'll tell you what, the effects of first-time nerves on the trigger finger, that's what.
I saw something, Captain.
He's a bit whiny for a space marine. He really doesn't come across as a highly trained superhuman killing machine.
Pull yourself together. There will be plenty to shoot at soon enough.
How do you know? You said you're going into the unknown. There could be nothing there.
They head into the storm and find the remains of a large battle.
Which gives them a handy clue as to what happened to the 100 Imperial fists they were sent to help.
So they discover that the bodies have decayed and that this is the work of chaos.
Continuing with this mission would not be an act of valor. It would be a waste of this squad.
In your opinion, Apothecary?
It'd be my opinion as well, and probably that of the Codex Astartes.
Codex Astartes?
It's like the Ultramarine equivalent of an American football playbook, because they can't be trusted to think for themselves.
Further on, the land speeder has stopped, so the captain and one other marine go to investigate.
Well, let's hope it's not an ambush, because that would mean the sergeant is already dead, so if the captain dies, the squad would be without effective leadership.
It turns out they're both dead, and it's an ambush!
The squad provides covering fire, but Proteus explains they have to stay behind as ordered.
One marine carrying the banner gets shot, so another marine goes to catch the banner, but not the other guy?
Yeah, it's chapter pride or some such nonsense.
Elsewhere, the sergeant climbs up a cliff and spots his enemy.
And because he's evil, he just stands there and waits to be shot.
They manage to kill off the rest of the enemy before getting a good look at their foe.
Chaos Space Marines.
Turns out that a reinforced skull can be cut like butter.
The captain regroups with the rest of his squad and finds out 3 of them are dead.
Permission to extract their gene seed.
You don't need to ask permission, that's one of the main reasons you're even there.
Gene seed?
It's basically genetic material used to create new Space Marines, so if you run out of it, the chapter is ultimately doomed, which is why you wouldn't waste time dicking about asking for permission to recover it.
Having dealt with that, we see yet more of them just walking along.
If anything happens to me, you know my wishes.
Exterminate us.
For a change of pace, instead of seeing them just walk around, we get a platforming section.
They get to the other end and see that the chapel has been redecorated.
The others join them to explore the seemingly empty chapel.
Right, that guy who keeps shooting his flamer is really getting on my nerves. Space Marines can see in the dark, so unless they're at war with mutants, heretics, aliens and cobwebs, they're just wasting ammo.
And the apothecary wouldn't need to use a flashlight, it would be better if he just uses night vision for this scene.
Head wound. Fatal. Hostiles.
Really? Are you sure his brain just didn't push the eject button?
This gives us our next action scene where they start fighting a demon.
And because it's evil, it stands there roaring at them while they shoot at it, rather than trying to pick them off one by one as it had initially.
It's rather tricky to really see what's going on in this action scene, but eventually the demon and the captain go through a wall and stumble off a cliff.
I really hope that as he tumbles to his death, he realises the apothecary was right.
Python explains that the captain has decided that Proteus should be in charge of the team in the event of his death.
I say we go back. So say your brothers.
The beacon is still sending.
It's on autocycle.
There is a chance it is not.
Yeah, there's a chance it was activated by the enemy to lure you into this death trap, but they decide to stay anyway.
They reach the end of the room in the chapel where they find the last 2 surviving Imperial fists.
The chaplain, Karnak, explains they're there to guard a book, and then explains what happened to the rest of them.
His story sounds like it would be a much more interesting and action-packed version of this film.
How did you survive?
I have no comforting answer, battle brother.
Or in fact, any answer at all.
After more walking, we finally get another action scene.
And because he's evil, he decides to shout loud enough so that the Ultramarines are aware of the impending attack.
Here they come.
They form into a defensive circle and wait for the enemy to show up.
Being reasonable chaps, they decide to run directly at the guns, not shooting themselves, and seemingly wearing armour made out of paper.
A few of them make it through the gunfire, only ending up getting killed by the chaplain's blue glow of death.
Which is luckily something they just invented for the film, because I really don't need any more reasons to hate chaplains.
After lots of close-ups of shooting, things are looking bad for the Ultramarines until Captain Severus shows up.
He decides that the best way to recover from falling off a cliff is running, followed by easily killing traitor marines.
With a reinvigorated captain butchering his way through enemies single-handedly, they make their way back to the Thunderhawk.
Once safely back on the ship, Proteus visits the captain to explain he has doubts about the loyalty of the chaplain.
They confront the chaplain and the Imperial Fist, only to discover that the relic is empty.
One Marine just happens to walk in with the banner which starts burning. All of a sudden, this is meant to indicate the presence of a demon rather than just odd weather.
The captain kills the chaplain and knocks out the Imperial Fist with ease.
If the demon is dead, why is this still burning?
Oh no, it was the captain, because his inexplicable survival and returning better than ever didn't make that really obvious.
The captain easily knocks out Proteus and the other Space Marine before picking up the book.
And because he's evil, he decides to just leave them rather than kill them when he has a perfect chance.
The Imperial Fist helps Proteus in hunting down the captain along with their friend Veronor.
They track the demon down to the Reclusium for the final battle.
The demon is using the book, which now has words in it, to open up a warp gate which we're told will destroy the Ultramarines' homeworld.
They open fire at the demon and so it goes hopping off on the walls.
The demon easily deals with the Imperial Fist and Veronor before deciding to swap bodies again, this time attempting to possess Proteus.
Think of the glory, Proteus.
Luckily, Pythol shows up in time to save him and then dies soon after.
Proteus gets trapped again, but uses the trick that the captain taught him at the start of the movie.
Veronor gets up and starts running about a bit, distracting the demon so that Proteus can get the Warhammer.
And so Proteus starts a speech before attacking the demon.
Everything has a purpose. The Emperor ordains it so.
Oddly enough, the demon's tactic of walking slowly towards Proteus and doing nothing to dodge the hammer doesn't seem to work out for him.
I march from a crag, and I know no fear!
The final scene is of Proteus giving the introduction speech to a bunch of new recruits.
And so, with endless repetition and no progress, it's a happy ending.
And so the film ends, and in conclusion there are things I really like about this movie. The most obvious being the English voice cast. John Hurt, Terence Stamp, Sean Pertwee, people with interesting character voices, and also bring a lot of talent to back it up.
Of course, that's wasted with dull characters, a dull and tedious chapter to follow, and a dull and predictable storyline.
Yes. Chaos indeed.
Yeah, but it might be predictable to you because you have an extensive knowledge of the background story.
Which is more than the film has. They get a lot of facts wrong and then don't explain a lot of other things, so if you were a new viewer you'd have no idea what's going on. It also falls into the trap of really lazy writing, where the bad guys are idiots just because they're evil. What makes this worse is that the script's actually written by Dan Abnett, a guy who's done lots of very good, much better stories about Warhammer 40,000, as well as writing stories for Marvel and DC Comics.
At least that the characters and weapons and vehicles all look like they were taken straight from the game. It's a nice touch at least.
True, but the animation is quite crap. Most computer games look better than this. Most of the scenery throughout the film is covered in dust. The faces all just look wrinkled and old and horrible. And the action is just slow and awkward.
And finally, I guess one good thing you can say is they at least tried to make a Warhammer movie. It may not have gelled perfectly, but that might be because it doesn't translate well, or perhaps they'll do better next time.
They could have picked almost any other Black Library novel and it would have been better than this. They have a talented writer and a talented voice cast, and so it should have been brilliant. Instead, you end up with a film that alienates new viewers and annoys people who know the background. So seemingly they were trying to aim for people in between those two camps, which is no one. They've made a film aimed for no one to enjoy.